Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to On Deadline with Ann Choi. This is our third installment of the Deadline Club series for student journalists in New York City. My name is Katina Perrin, and I am the Student Relations Chair of the Deadline Club. I'll tell you a little bit more about the club and why you should become a member later. For now, I just want to give you a little housekeeping things. We are in webinar mode, so we unfortunately can't see your faces. So please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us your name, what school you go to. That's also a really good place for questions. So we will have a question answer section at the end, but feel free to type your questions throughout. And as you all know, as journalists, what we're known for is asking questions. This is a great opportunity to ask your questions. There are no stupid questions. So make your journalism teachers proud, type your questions in, and let's have a really robust discussion. To get us going, I want to introduce Kevin Truong, who is a Newmark J School graduate, documentary photographer and freelance journalist, and also the 2020 recipient of the Deadline Club Scholarship. So I'll hand it over to you now, Kevin.
Hey, Katina, thank you so much for that introduction. And Ann, it's so great to meet you, and everyone, welcome. And I would love to start off just by asking you how you got into journalism, generally speaking, but specifically how you got interested in data. I'm really curious.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Katina. Again, I am so honored to be here, and I'm happy to talk data and data reporting. How did I get into journalism and why data? The really corny answer is I grew up in South Korea, and I learned English through reading Time magazine. I thought, the writing was always clear, and I thought it was so fascinating that one could be an expert at a given topic, talk to interesting people, and move on to a different topic. I thought the nature of being able to learn for a career, that was really appealing to me. So I decided to come to the States. I went to University of Texas at Austin to study journalism. I did my undergraduate degrees there, and I tried really hard to get a job, but because I wasn't very active in student papers, I didn't have a body of clips that really helped me stand out among candidates. Data really was the way for me to make myself an appealing reporter, because unlike traditional reporting, data gives you a great way to become another sense of expert, meaning that you're able to find original analysis. You don't really have to cite anyone else, right? Because you're the one who find the data set, you analyze the data set, and be able to say something original, and that is also accurate, but be able to stand by the statement on your own. So, and I was able to find the magic of data reporting through a class that I took at UT. So I thought, if I don't have a clip or portfolio of traditional news reporting, I can really set myself apart by digging into data journalism. So after that, one class, of course I did other internships, but I made a really, intentional plan to build work that is not just data reporting, but combination of traditional reporting, where I talk to sources, talk to stakeholders, and see what my data analysis means to them, what might have caused it. And one of my favorite part of data reporting is when sources tell me my analysis is crap, right? And that I have biases in how I collected it, how I analyzed it, and that back and forth. And that's true with any reporting, right? What you think to be true in one sense can be incorrect in other when you talk to different parties. So just doing that over and over, I think gave me a sense of, what, I can have a career. I don't have to be this, for lack of a better term, a person who, has network of sources through connections. I can be an expert, I can be an authority using records and data, and that really has helped me build my career. That was a long answer. To your
No, that's
question.
amazing. And I love that you learned English from Time Magazine, like what your how that went. So what do you, when you're at a party and people ask you what a data journalist is, beyond just like traditional journalist, is it really just this idea that you're not traditional relying on sources, but more so on data? Like, what do you tell them, just kind of so that they can understand?
Exactly that. I mean, how I view data as is data as, instead of relying on say 3 or 4 expert or sources, right? I'm relying on thousands of sources. And again, I want to be very clear that numbers always lie, right? And just as people do, right? Numbers have, depending on how they're gathered, who collects it, there's always going to be a bias in place. So I try to deal with data the same way as I deal with people, but I keep in mind that because I'm dealing with hundreds and thousands of records, I tend to find patterns, right? That could give me an idea of what's taking place, that people alone cannot say or give weight to the same way as numbers do. Katina mentioned earlier how as reporters we are afraid of math. I hate math too. I'm not
So do I
particularly
hate that.
particularly good at it, but I think that's one of the misconceptions, that you have to be really good at math to be a data reporter. You have to know percent change. You basically have to know 2 or 3 basic statistical skills to really to be able to make original analysis. But the set of skills required to expand and report out your data analysis is the same skills that you need in traditional reporting, right? So as long as you can find the data set, question the authority, who gathered it, why were they gathered, talk to the real person behind the data set, clean it and analyze it. And when I say analyze it, apply 2 or 3 statistical skills like finding average, finding median, finding pattern over time. A really not threatening types of math. You take your findings, and again, you report out what your data says as you would with any source would tell you, right? Um, so I would really encourage people, if you're interested, but if you think, oh, I'm not comfortable with numbers, I tell a lot of my colleagues too who have a similar view. I say, being a beat reporter, some in a sense is much harder than being a data reporter, because um, data analysis is nothing nothing without contextual reporting, right?
Yeah.
And for especially for our field, you don't need fancy statistical modeling. You need because at the end of the day, you have to explain your numbers to your readers, right? And how often do you read from newspapers about fancy modeling techniques, right? It's often say, especially with coronavirus, it's about which cities having a spike in cases and why, where is the gap between vaccinations and hospitalizations. So I would really encourage that, yes, there is math involved, but the cornerstone of data reporting is still beat reporting and field reporting.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you, because I was looking at your work, it's really great at the city, and you've done a wide range of stories, on declining immigration, women leading the fundraising race for city council. What makes for a good data story, in your opinion? When you're looking at this data, I would imagine like an increase in something or a decrease in something. Like, what makes for a good data story?
Right. Um, I try to remember that readers will most likely understand or will walk away with the most interesting pattern, right? With the immigration story, for example, I pitched that story to my editor, as for as someone who's covering New York City, and the city's recovery stage. A lot has been talked about, the wealthy leaving New York City, and especially with the new taxes being levied upon, tax increase being levied upon the wealthy. There was a lot of coverage about, uh, uh, would this break New York City? Would this be the doom of the New York City? But I thought the same type of conversation wasn't really being held about the immigrant groups. And I wanted to say, with COVID part hitting immigrant groups harder than any other group, with the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes, I want to see how this is impacting, how this would impact New York's recovery. Now, this could be done in a very, generalized way, where I talk to 2 or 3 stakeholders and say, what do you see? Immigration attorney, what do you see? Economics expert, what do you see? But what really helped the story shine is, like you said, being able to find the numbers that really showed a pattern over time, right? If I can, because I was able to find United States Census Bureau data and immigration data that shows, yes, immigration demand is trending down. I was able to present that fact, right? Present that number to different stakeholders and say, okay, this is what the numbers show. What do you think is happening here, right? So being able to find a data set that really orients different competing views on what's happening on a specific trend or a pattern, I think, because keep in mind that a data set doesn't, very rarely a data set will give you a clear answer to why something's happening, right? It gives you oftentimes data gives you an opening for people to guess or make an educated guess on why something might be happening. So being able to find a neutral data set, something that is trusted, right? So it could be a government data set, it could be federal or city level, and that gives you an opening for others to make conjectures on what's taking place. That makes a story that's nuanced, right? I'm not going to be able to say these are the 3 reasons why the immigration numbers is down, but these are educated guesses that experts and stakeholders are making based on this trusted numbers.
Yeah, and I would love to you talked about a beat earlier. So is data your beat, or do you feel like it's helpful for data journalists to have a beat like health or government or housing, or do you just constantly look at data across the board? Because I'm just curious about, there's so much data out there. Where are you going to find this data, and do you have relationships with sources, or are you just looking at websites? What's your process like?
That's a great question that I was having that very discussion with my husband yesterday. Because you're right, I think most data reporters across newsrooms tend to be a general assignment reporters, because like you said, there's data in every aspect. Some beats like health or crime or immigration or economy, there tend to be more reliable data sets available. So data reporters will gravitate towards that field. But like most data reporters across newsrooms, I'm a sort of a general assignment reporter as well. Now, this gives me the freedom to explore any topic as I would like, but I do wish if I had a certain beat, and some data reporters do, that would help that person to develop a source, right? A body of source, a network of sources who could pinpoint to data set that I haven't thought of, data set that's new, data set that you could collect with the help of stakeholders. So while it is common and could be beneficial to be a general assignment reporter and pick and choose wherever the numbers lead you. I think if you already have a beat in mind that you want to cover, if you do develop your data skills, you know, that's going to set you apart from other regular beat reporters, because again, just think of it as another tool in your toolbox, right? Data reporter doesn't have to confine you in your how you do your stories. Doesn't mean that you can only write about numbers and do charts and do upshot style, the New York Times data reporting website style stories. You can do a little bit of both.
That's great. And then, you know, when I was a student, I'm a recent graduate from CUNY, Craig Newmark, and yeah, data really scared me, and I was always really, I don't know, for some reason, we had an interactive journalism class and it really freaked me out, and we had to learn like data wrapper and all those things. What do you think is a common mistake that people make with data, even if they're not a data reporter, they're just incorporating it into their traditional reporting? You mentioned kind of, I saw recently, I kept on seeing this 3,800, this statistic about the increase in hate crimes against Asian Americans, and it was 3,800. But sometimes, like, they wouldn't give a context, like what that period of time was, or what the previous number was. What's a common mistake that journalists often make when using data?
Great question. I think data journalism has become a catch-all phrase for visual reporters who make interactive charts and graphs and maps that really just brings a new level of visual understanding to what the numbers are saying. So that's one branch. Another branch is data reporters who have data skills like me, who find data set, clean it, analyze it, but rather than relying on visual tools or interactive storytelling, we report out the findings similarly you would to what the source tells you. The third group I would say is the developers who create say searchable database or something customized interactives where you know, if you punch in your zip code, it tells you all the different information that is relevant to your geographic or your racial group. So those are three big branches that fall under the data journalism world. I think so. It will be helpful to distinguish which of those three fields that you are interested, because depending on your level of interest and where they are, how you approach data journalism will vary vastly, right? So if you are wanting to understand data more or wanting to develop skills in data reporting after you identify your level of interest or which particular aspect in data journalism, I think the best way forward would be to read a lot of, similar to other traditional reporting, read a lot of works done by other reporters. And just even if you have no interest whatsoever in data reporting, Kevin, like you mentioned, being able to have, I don't want to say basic, but a baseline of number literacy, I think will make you a better reporter or better documentarian, a better storyteller, period. Questioning the timeline, like you said, when you hear the word increase in 3,800%, that's like 40 times increase, right? Is that because and if that, an increase that's sudden tends to mean that it's not that there were that many reports or that many incidents of crime because of coronavirus or because of one or two other factors. It's likely that the trend is being heavily undercounted, right? So being able to spot what one particular set of number could mean and not taking it at a face value, will require reading various articles using numbers, but just understanding numbers a little bit better. And there are, great books and great literature on this that is explained plainly. So being able to gain some numerical literacy, I think, will be beneficial to everyone and any reporters or editors or anyone in the field of journalism.
Hi, I feel bad interrupting this. This is a great conversation. I love this idea of digital or number literacy in terms of storytelling. I know we have a number of students and professors in the audience, so this is a great time. I'm just going to go for a little bit of a joy, like what the Deadline Club is and what SPJ is. But for everyone in the audience, this is a really good time for you to use the chat. And there is a Q&A function here too, apparently on the webinar, but I don't know exactly what that is. But we'll look out for questions from you in both of those. And again, remember, the sign of a good journalist is lots of questions. So practice that muscle right now. And I just want to let people know that the Deadline Club is the chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists, which is the oldest journalism organization in the country. And membership to the Deadline Club is free, which is really exciting. You do have to become a SPJ member first. That is $37.50 for the year. But what you get for that is discounts on in hotels, discounts to conferences. There's like, I think, a car insurance discount too. So things related to journalism and things not, things that might help you become a better journalist. There's member only access for trainings and events and our yearly conference. There's a discount on the MOE, the Mark of Excellence Awards, and that's for students. But a really interesting thing too, that's not as forward as it should be when we talk about becoming a member, is the SPJ Legal Defense Fund. So God forbid you get in any legal trouble as a journalist, but a lot of times, and especially as a freelancer, Pointer just, I think it was Pointer or CJR just had an article about this today. The people you're writing for or working for may not have your back in a legal way. But SPJ can. So it's a really strong reason, even as a student, for you to join SPJ. And I want to show you, I'm going to share my screen for 1 second to show you this really cool thing that SPJ has on their website. So if you're a graduating student or about to graduate, you can go to the SPJ site, and I'll put the info in the chat. And they have a form letter here for you to ask people to give you money as a graduation gift, so you can join SPJ. So it's a form letter. You just type in your name, you type in your email and their email, and you can send the message. So that might be a little cheeky way for you to get some membership to SPJ if it's something that you can't afford for yourself. So I'll type in the information in the chat, and I'll back out now because I know what we're all here for is hearing more from Kevin and Ann. So I'm going to back out and toss it back to you. I see there's a few questions in there, and feel free to talk to put in more, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, and so Carolyn has a question for you. They're wondering, what platforms and databases do you find and collect your data for your story?
Right. For my data analysis, I use a open source programming language called R, and I'm going to put it in the chat later too. There are so many resources for journalists specifically to learn how to use this platform. I'm going to share. It's put together by Washington Post data reporter Andrew Tran. That is one resource that I highly recommend. As for finding databases for my story, for New York City government, for all its sometimes inadequacies, the open data website for the city's city records is fantastic. I would say, the databases are regularly updated. It's clean. It has a data dictionary that is easy to understand, and it always has the agency who keeps track of. So it's easy for me to talk to a real person to find out more about the data set. For all of my data stories, almost always I use Census Bureau data, right? Not exclusively, but anytime I use a data set, I want to be able to contextualize what that means. In order to do that, I need to know more about the people or the particular place that I'm covering. US Census Bureau has the most amazing data bases that you didn't think they keep track of. US or another website called uscensusreporter.org is it's not the census government website, but it's put together by, I believe, Knight Foundation, that is much easier and intuitive to work with. So that's another resource that I would recommend.
That's great. I think we have time for one more question. And I just wanted to ask, because we're talking to students, like I mentioned, I'm a recent graduate. And you also mentioned that when you first graduated, you had trouble getting a job because you didn't have the clips. I'd love to hear just how you ended up at the city and what advice you have for all these lovely students that are here today.
Oh man, it took me a while to get to, I really wanted to cover New York City. I lived in Austin, Texas. Afterwards, I went to Miami, South Florida. I worked at Miami Herald, South Florida Sun Sentinel, and then at Newsday out on Long Island. But and each newsroom was able to provide me valuable lessons on how to use data and how to become a better reporter. But I think along the steps, I think I had a goal in mind that there is a place, New York City, that I want to cover. So, I kept that goal in mind, and every time I would do a small or large story, of course, I did my best for the audience that our newspapers were serving. Um, but I would say I kept I had a mindset that each work that I do is going to be a portfolio, right? That I'm going to present it to future employers at some point. So um, what that means is there could be a time where the assignment that you're given is not your favorite, right? Or the format that your editor wants you to do is not something that you prefer. But being able to execute given task, and you don't know how which of your clip or which of your work is going to be received down the road, right? So being able to accept, even if it's not your dream internship right away, just think of those gigs, those internships, those jobs as something that will one day lead you to the place that you really want to work for. Um, uh, not the I not the most glamorous response, but I would say, just being able to take, small and big assignments, work with your reporters and your editors, uh, get the job done, be respectful. I can't stress enough how important it is to be respectful of the newsroom that you are given the job opportunity to work in, because it is a small industry. You never know who you're going to run into down the road, and whose help you're going to need. And be kind to yourself. That it takes time. It's a competitive industry. It's extremely rewarding, but it also has really hard days. So if this is the field that you want to be in, it's an investment. It's going to take time. There are going to be some bad days, but you're going to be able to learn a lot. It will rarely be boring. You're going to get paid doing it.
No, that's great. I love that. Be kind to yourself. That's something that I'm learning to do. There's one more question, if you have time, that I missed in the Q&A. I think it's a good way to end this. It's a really good question. What skills are essential for journalists today, in your opinion?
Being able to listen carefully, right? I think more and more reliance on social media at times, I think, obscures whose voices matter. I think being able to listen to stakeholders and be mindful as who 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 you think is the stakeholder for the story, right? Being able to check yourself for biases on whose voice you think should include or not. And in order to determine that, you need to read a lot on a topic that's been covered. You need to broaden your field of experts, and you need to really listen to as many people as possible before you form an opinion on how you should cover the story. Um, and that also includes being able to tune out some stories, right? Or some voices, right? I think and I mean, personally for me, when I started out, and we were mentioning earlier, Twitter can overwhelm reporters. I think it can be an echo chamber that really intimidates you and kind of forces what success should look like in journalism if you pay too much attention on Twitter. I'm here to remind you, most Americans aren't on Twitter, right? The people who you want to serve through your reporting probably care more about what other stakeholders have to say than few loud voices on Twitter. So being able to discern what voices is most important to your story, and being able to, again, corny, but listen to your own voice and say, after having done the research and the reporting, I have the authority, I can make the call in a fair manner to say which voices should go where.
That was amazing. Ann, thank you so much for making data less scary for me. And Katina, thank you for setting this up. Everyone, make sure you sign up and look into SPJ and Deadline Club. And yeah, I think that's it. Unless Katina, you have anything else to say?
No, it's great. It's a beautiful day out. Go outside if you can, even for 5 minutes. And thanks for being here. And enjoy the rest of your spring. Good luck, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.